couple months since I gave you 5 free Spider-Man VR games to try, and today I'm back with 5 more. But unlike last time, they're in no particular order. They have different levels of content but are all tons of fun to get into. Except... wanting to find some fresh new games for you guys, I searched every store I could. Browsing itch.io, I found something that looked incredible. The store page for Going Off the Rails teased its recreating of the train scene from Spider-Man 2. It was no hard sell. How cool would it be to play the part in one of the most iconic scenes from the Raimi movies? Plus, this game was breaking from the norm. All of the Spider-Man VR games I've played are what I've come to call slingers. Slingers simply put you in a city environment with some web shooters and on occasion enemies to fight. There are exceptions though, like Battle Glide, which gives you a few Spider-Man-y scenarios to use your powers in. Going Off the Rails was set to be the next exception. Well, that was until booting it up. My in-game hands were so weirdly misaligned with my real hands that aiming web shots became nearly impossible. You're supposed to web as many of these boxes as you can to stop the train. However, once I realized it was going about as fast as Aunt May walks, all tension and urgency disappeared. You might be able to get some fun out of it, but for me, the only rails this game is going off are that of quality. Physics-based slingers have always been common in the Spider-Man VR genre, but in my opinion, Spideriini is the game that does physics-based swinging best. For that reason, it won the title of Best Spider-Man VR Tech Demo in Spider-Man VR Hunt Finale. It's powered by Nimzo Studios' Hybrid engine, which you might have seen demonstrated in this video from around a year ago. Unlike many current VR physics engines, Hybrid is more or less free of jank, and one place its absence is felt is in Spideriini's implementation of wall crawling. In Finale, I praised it for fixing the mechanic, as in other Spider-Man VR games it tends to get overlooked. Spideriini simply makes your hands sticky when you pull the trigger, so as long as your hand actually touches the wall, you won't miss your grab and fall to the ground. The swinging is fantastic as well, being the only example of my golden standard for the mechanic on this list. On their own, the webs are taut pendulums, but upon pulling the trigger, you can retract them. This allows you to naturally create momentum as you near the web's contact point. Spideriini is probably the most realistic web swinging experience on this list, so if that's what you're looking for, look no further. Swinging in Under the Mask feels incredibly smooth and approachable, as you have web crosshairs to guide your shots with. The angle your webs come out of your wrists at is slightly different in every game, so having these crosshairs completely eliminates an unnecessary learning curve. Further, Under the Mask's webs have travel time, but unlike other implementations of the feature, their speed is perfectly balanced. They move slowly enough so that you need to lead your shots when going fast, but not so slow that you over or undershoot your target every single time. It's a fairly simple addition that adds a degree of nuance to the swinging experience, and it's so satisfying when you pull off a risky shot. Under the Mask also avoids the hit or miss wall crawling mechanic by circumventing it completely. In its stead is this wall running feature, which, while not without faults, is super fun to use. I love to run along the side of buildings, jump off, and then try to web myself onto the other side. Under the Mask is the work of a single developer, Liable Duke, and although they aren't working on the game anymore, it's just as fun as when I first reviewed it. This game is an experience built inside Meta Horizon worlds, and since the program has multiplayer built in, you get to play with your friends or people from all around the world. Web swing madness spawns you in this apartment. In front of you, you'll find your web shooters. Not only do these allow you to swing, but web other players and crawl on walls. Like many versions of the ability, the wall crawling is unremarkable, but the swinging is a blast from the past. It reminds me of Far From Home VR, one of the oldest Spider-Man VR games, in that the webs resemble grapples. Normally I'd say this swinging is bad because it isn't character accurate, and while that is true, it really comes down to a matter of preference. I've realized recently that I have a habit of presenting my opinion as fact, and I'm sorry about that. Some people prefer this version of web swinging. Hell, Project Demigod, my personal favorite Spider-Man VR game, has an option to enable it. So while I might not prefer it, you can certainly still have fun with it. The city environment is quite small, but everything you'd want to see and do is in the center. There are tokens dotted around, and while trying to collect them all, they seem to immediately respawn. I'm not sure what happens when you find all of them, so let me know in the comments. But arguably the main event of web swing madness isn't the web shooters, it's these Dr. Octopus arms. The only other game I know of with Doc Ock arms is Superfly, a paid and, in my opinion, better experience, but one that lacks web swing madness as multiplayer. So if you want to throw cars and web up your friends, this is your best bet. Since my last video, the VRChat Spider-Lair has evolved into its newest and far greater iteration, the Superior Spider-Lair. It's not as big a jump as the Amazing was to the Ultimate, but there are some key new features that are both awesome and exciting. First on that list sounds a little boring, but is far better than you'd think. A tutorial. You don't know how many times I've had to search Discord servers, YouTube videos, even Reddit posts for instructions on how to do things as simple as wall crawling in these games. It's so convenient to have a level to play through that shows you just how much power is at your disposal. In the tutorial, I discovered several new abilities. First of all, sliding. I don't think we've ever seen this in a Spider-Man VR game before, which is weird because it's an incredibly obvious inclusion. Another no-brainer is wall running. I found this works super well, and the sound effects make it feel even more immersive. I once campaigned for view flipping when wall running in these games, but I now think the feature is only needed when running up or down a wall. Running alongside, keeping the view the same feels a lot more natural to me. Getting out into the city, you'll see some small changes to the environment, like a revamped Central Park. Using your web shooters, you might notice the webs are now simulated and undulate the way they would in the real world. I feel like web zips have been slightly downgraded though. Previously, they were tied to a trigger pull, which I enjoyed, but now that the input makes you flip while swinging, this is no longer. Something else that has been removed is the sewer section of the map, but in their wake, vehicles. Beneath the penthouse, there are two Spider-Dorainns, and although you can't physically grab the wheel to drive them, they're a lot of fun to commandeer. There's also the Spider-Copter, a ridiculous invention in the Spider-Man comics, but a welcome one here. In older versions of the lair, there was a circling helicopter that you could trail behind, so it's cool to see it return. The lair has one of the best movement systems in this subgenre, and I feel like it's begging for combat to be implemented, but whether that day ever comes will remain to be seen.